The transmission crackled through Earth's dying atmosphere at 3:47 a.m. Venus Standard Time. 6 words that would shatter everything humanity thought it knew about survival, about loyalty, about the creatures they had dismissed as mere pets for millennia. This is Astra. Venus belongs to us now. The voice was unmistakably canine, deeper than any earthbound dog, refined by genetic enhancement, yet carrying that ancient warmth that had bonded human and hound since the first campfire. But something else lurked beneath those familiar tones, something that made Dr. Elena Markov's blood freeze in her veins as she stood in mission control, surrounded by blinking screens and the scattered debris of humanity's last desperate gamble. Because according to every sensor, every satellite, every monitoring device humanity possessed, Astra and her pack should have been dead for 3 months. Venus was supposed to be impossible. The crushing atmospheric pressure could flatten a human body in seconds. Surface temperatures hot enough to melt lead. Clouds of sulfuric acid that could dissolve metal. The Soviet Union had managed to land a probe there once, decades ago. It survived 14 minutes before the planet's wrath claimed it. And yet here was Astra, speaking across the void with a clarity that suggested she wasn't just alive, she was thriving. Elena's fingers trembled as she reached for the transmission controls, her reflection ghostly in the darkened monitors around her. The woman staring back looked older than her 43 years, silver threading through black hair that had once been as lustrous as the coat of the golden retriever she had spent 5 years bioengineering for this moment. The same retriever whose voice now carried across 93 million kilometers of space with impossible confidence. Astra. Elena whispered into the microphone, her voice barely audible over the hum of machinery that kept Earth's remaining population breathing filtered air. Astra, is that really you? Static answered her. Then, cutting through the electronic snow like a blade through silk. Hello, Elena. We need to talk. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Not Dr. Markov or Mission Control, Elena. As if the dog remembered their quiet moments together in the laboratory, when Elena would kneel beside Astra's containment pod and whisper stories of blue skies and green fields, promises of a world where both human and canine could run free beneath an unfiltered sun. But that intimacy was wrong somehow, twisted by distance and impossibility into something that made Elena's enhanced survival instincts, the same genetic modifications she had given to Astra, scream warnings in her nervous system. Where are the others? Elena managed to ask, thinking of the 6 dogs who had departed Earth 3 months ago in their living bioships. Orion, powerful as his constellation namesake. Luna, precise as clockwork. Sage, wise beyond her engineered years. Zephyr, swift as the wind that no longer blew clean on Earth. And little Nebula, whose curiosity had always burned brighter than her caution. They're here with me, Astra replied, and Elena could hear something in the background. Not barking, but a harmonious sound that raised every hair on her arms. Changed, but here. Changed because they had to be. Elena closed her eyes, remembering the last images transmitted from Venus before the bioships had gone silent. The pack had been struggling against impossible odds. Their vessels, creatures as much as spacecraft, born from engineered algae designed to adapt and survive, taking damage from the planet's hostile environment. Mission parameters had called for them to release their microbial payload and return home within 72 hours. That was 97 days ago. Astra, what happened down there? The bioships stopped transmitting. All vital signs went dark. We thought. Elena's voice caught. We held memorial services. The silence stretched long enough for Elena to wonder if the connection had been lost. Then Astra's voice returned, carrying notes Elena had never heard from any terrestrial creature. Harmonics that seemed to resonate with the deepest parts of human consciousness, triggering responses that evolution had never intended. We didn't die, Elena. We became something else. Something necessary. A pause, filled with that strange harmonic undertone. The bioships, they taught us. And now Venus breathes. Elena's training as a bioengineer warred with her growing sense of unreality. Bioships were sophisticated, yes, living vessels capable of adaptation and growth, but they were ultimately tools, engineered organisms with no more consciousness than a particularly complex computer. They couldn't teach anything except by transmitting data through their neural links, unless something had gone catastrophically wrong with the enhancement protocols. Astra, listen to me very carefully, Elena said, slipping into the calm, authoritative tone she had used during the dog's training. I need you to run a full biological diagnostic. Check your neural pathways for anomalous growth. Examine your hormone levels for irregularities. The isolation and stress may have affected your enhanced cognitive functions. The sound that came through the speakers made Elena step back from her console. It wasn't quite laughter, but it carried the same dismissive warmth. If laughter could somehow incorporate frequencies that human ears weren't designed to process. Oh, Elena, Astra said, and her voice held depths that no earthbound creature should possess. I'm not sick. I'm evolved. Behind Elena, the morning shift began filing into mission control, their faces bearing the same exhausted resignation that marked everyone who still worked to keep humanity's dying civilization functioning. They moved like sleepwalkers through their routines, checking systems that monitored a dozen failed colony attempts, maintaining communications with orbital stations where Earth's elite waited for news of humanity's next viable world. None of them had noticed the transmission yet. Elena could keep this quiet for now, but not for long. And when the news broke, when humanity learned that their last desperate gamble had apparently succeeded in ways no one had anticipated, the consequences would be unpredictable. Astra, Elena said, leaning closer to the microphone. I need you to explain what you mean by evolved. And I need to know about the bioships. Are they still responding to commands? Commands. The harmonics in Astra's voice shifted, taking on qualities that made Elena's enhanced nervous system flood with adrenaline. Elena, you need to understand something. The bioships were never just tools. They were alive from the moment we first bonded with them. But Venus made them more. It made us all more. Elena's fingers flew over her console, bringing up archived footage from a mission launch. There was Astra as she had been 3 months ago. Beautiful, intelligent, loyal, but recognizably the golden retriever Elena had spent years perfecting. Enhanced intelligence, yes. Improved physical resilience, certainly. But still, at her core, a dog bred to serve and please humans. The creature speaking to her across the void carried Astra's voice, but the intelligence behind it seemed vast in a way that made Elena's engineered mind struggle to process the implications. Astra, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need a direct answer. Are you and the pack planning to return to Earth? The pause that followed lasted exactly 17 seconds. Elena counted them, using the meditation techniques that kept her sane in a world where breathable air was rationed and the sun rarely penetrated the ash-clogged sky. No, Astra said finally. Earth is dying, Elena. You know this. The atmosphere processors are failing, the biomes are collapsing, and every year humanity grows more desperate, more dangerous. Another pause, shorter this time. We've made something better here. Something that can last. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. The Venus mission had been humanity's most ambitious terraforming project, designed to create a backup world where Earth's population could relocate before their homeworld became completely uninhabitable. The dogs were supposed to prepare the way, then guide human colonists to their new home. They weren't supposed to claim that world for themselves. Astra, listen to me, Elena said, forcing calm into her voice even as her mind raced through the implications. Humanity needs Venus. We've invested everything in this project. Trillions of credits, decades of research, the hopes of 8 billion people. You can't just. Can't what? Astra interrupted, and for the first time since the transmission began, Elena heard something recognizably canine in her voice. The stubborn defiance of a dog who had been pushed too far. Can't protect something we built with our own lives. Can't make decisions about our own future. The question hit Elena like a physical blow. In all her years of bioengineering, she had focused on creating beings capable of serving humanity's needs. Enhanced intelligence to follow complex commands. Improved physical capabilities to survive in hostile environments. Stronger emotional bonds to ensure loyalty even under extreme stress. She had never considered what would happen when those enhanced minds began making their own choices. The bioships, Elena said, grasping for some thread of understanding. Tell me about the bioships. Are they still functional? Functional. Astra's harmonics shifted again, and Elena realized she was beginning to recognize emotional tones in those impossible frequencies. This one felt like gentle mockery. Elena, the bioships aren't separate from us anymore. They're part of us. Part of Venus. Part of something larger than either species was alone. Elena's training provided no framework for processing this information. Bioships were designed to bond with their pilots. Yes, but the relationship was supposed to be symbiotic, not whatever Astra was describing. I need to see, Elena said suddenly, her scientific curiosity overriding her growing fear. Astra, can you establish a visual link? I need to see what's happened down there. Are you sure? Astra asked, and something in her tone made Elena's enhanced nervous system flood with warning chemicals. Venus has changed us, Elena. We might not look the way you remember. Elena thought of the golden retriever she had spent countless hours with, the warm brown eyes that had watched her with such trust as she explained the mission parameters, the soft fur that had provided comfort during the long nights of final preparations. Whatever Astra had become, Elena needed to see it with her own eyes. Show me, she said. The main display screen flickered to life, and Elena's first thought was that the transmission was corrupted. The image that resolved showed a landscape that couldn't exist. Rolling hills covered in vegetation that shimmered with an inner light, beneath a sky that shifted between pale blue and deeper turquoise. In the distance, structures that seemed grown rather than built stretched toward clouds that moved in patterns too organized to be natural. But it was the figure in the foreground that made Elena's breath catch in her throat. Astra was still recognizably canine, but transformed in ways that Elena's scientific mind struggled to categorize. Her golden fur had taken on an almost metallic quality, shot through with threads of silver and copper that seemed to pulse with their own light. She was larger than Elena remembered, not just in height, but in presence. The way she held herself suggested a confidence that had never existed in any earthbound creature. But it was Astra's eyes that made Elena step back from the screen. They were still brown, still warm, but they held depths that seemed to extend far beyond the skull that contained them. When Astra looked directly into the camera, Elena felt as though she was being observed by something vast and ancient, something that had seen the birth and death of worlds. Hello, Elena, Astra said, and her mouth moved in ways that no dog's mouth should be able to move, forming human words with impossible precision. You look tired. Elena realized she was shaking. The rational part of her mind cataloged the obvious genetic modifications: enlarged cranium to accommodate enhanced neural development, modified jaw structure for improved speech capability, what appeared to be some form of integrated biotechnology that caused the light patterns in Astra's fur. But the emotional part of her mind, the part that had bonded with this creature over years of shared work, recognized something that made her soul shrivel with a fear she couldn't name. This wasn't Astra anymore. This was something wearing Astra's form. What did you do to yourself? Elena whispered. Not what we did to ourselves, Astra replied, stepping closer to the camera. As she moved, Elena could see other shapes in the background. The rest of the pack, transformed in similar ways, but each maintaining their individual characteristics. Orion, massive and silver-streaked. Luna, sleek and precise, her fur now bearing patterns that looked almost like circuitry. What Venus did to us. What the bioships taught us to become. The bioships are organisms, Elena said, clinging to scientific fact like a lifeline. Advanced organisms, but they don't have consciousness. They can't teach anything except through programmed responses. Programmed by whom? Astra asked, tilting her head in a gesture that was heartbreakingly familiar despite her transformed appearance. You created the bioships from engineered algae. Yes. But where did the algae come from, Elena? What did you use as your base genetic material? Elena felt the world tilt around her. The algae samples had been collected from the deep ocean, from thermal vents where life persisted in conditions that mimicked some of the challenges they expected to face on Venus. Ancient organisms that had survived multiple extinction events, that had learned to thrive in environments where nothing else could live. Organisms that had been on Earth far longer than humanity. Far longer than any mammal. organisms that might have developed survival strategies that human science had barely begun to understand. You're saying the bioships are conscious? Elena asked. I'm saying they're old, Astra replied. Older than you imagine. And they remember things. They remember a time when worlds changed, when life had to adapt or die. They remember how to survive. Behind Elena, she heard footsteps as more of the morning shift arrived. Soon someone would notice the active transmission, would see what she was seeing, and then there would be no containing this information. Humanity's leaders would demand answers, would want to know why their investment hadn't produced the compliant, grateful colony they had expected. Astra, Elena said urgently, you have to understand. Humanity is dying. We need Venus. We need somewhere to go. You're welcome here, Astra said, and her transformed features showed something that might have been compassion. But not as conquerors, not as owners, as partners. What does that mean? It means you let go of the idea that intelligence exists to serve you, Astra replied. It means you accept that other minds, other forms of consciousness, have the right to make their own choices. It means you stop treating planets like resources to be consumed and start thinking of them as homes to be tended. Elena heard voices behind her, her colleagues beginning to notice the unprecedented transmission. Soon this conversation would become public, would be analyzed by committees and politicians and military strategists who would see Astra's words as either a miracle or a threat, depending on the perspective. And if humanity can't accept those terms? Elena asked. Astra's expression grew sad, but beneath the sadness Elena glimpsed something implacable, something that spoke of power beyond anything she had imagined when she first began engineering enhanced canines for space exploration. Then you'll remain on Earth until it can no longer support you, Astra said simply. And the universe will continue without you. The transmission ended. Elena stood frozen in front of the dark screen, her mind struggling to process what she had witnessed. Around her, mission control erupted in chaos as technicians realized they had lost contact with humanity's most important project. Voices called out status reports, demanded explanations, began implementing emergency protocols that had been designed for equipment failure. Not whatever this was, but Elena barely heard them. She was thinking about the golden retriever she had known, remembering quiet moments in the laboratory when Astra would rest her head on Elena's lap while the bioengineer worked late into the night. Simple moments of companionship between two species that had evolved together, that had learned to trust each other across the vast gulf that separated human and canine consciousness. That Astra was gone. The being who had spoken to her across the void was something new, something that humanity had inadvertently created but could no longer control. And judging by what she had seen, humanity might not be capable of creating anything like a partnership with these transformed creatures. Because partnership required equals, and Elena was beginning to suspect that whatever Astra and her pack had become on Venus, they were no longer humanity's equals. They might be humanity's superiors. Dr. Elena Markov turned away from the silent transmission equipment and walked toward her office, her mind already racing through the implications of what she had learned. She had perhaps an hour before word of the transmission reached the higher levels of Earth's government, before committees began demanding briefings and military advisors started discussing containment protocols. An hour to decide whether she would help humanity understand what they had created, or whether she would try to protect what remained of the golden retriever who had once trusted her with such innocent completeness. An hour to choose between species. As she sealed her office door behind her and began accessing classified files that detailed the true extent of the bioengineering project, Elena realized that the choice had already been made. It had been made the moment she first looked into Astra's enhanced eyes and saw not a tool, but a being capable of making her own decisions about her own future. Now she would have to live with the consequences. The files that appeared on Elena's screen told a story that even she, as the project's lead scientist, had never fully understood. The Venus mission had been humanity's last desperate gamble. Yes, but it had also been built on layers of deception that reached to the highest levels of Earth's governing council. The dogs weren't just enhanced for intelligence and physical resilience. They carried genetic modifications that Elena had believed were for improved radiation resistance, but the classified files revealed additional functions. Accelerated evolution protocols. adaptive cognitive frameworks designed to rewrite neural pathways in response to environmental pressures, biological imperatives that would activate if their human handlers were no longer available to provide guidance. They had been designed not just to survive without human oversight, but to thrive. Elena's hands trembled as she scrolled through technical specifications that read more like instructions for creating a new species than modifications to an existing one. The bioships, too, carried hidden capabilities, not just the adaptive organic technology that allowed them to function as spacecraft, but deep-coded biological imperatives that would activate under specific conditions. Conditions like prolonged isolation from Earth-based control systems. Elena realized with growing horror that she hadn't been creating tools for human expansion. She had been creating humanity's replacements. The question was whether the people who had authorized these hidden modifications had planned for this outcome, or whether they had simply been so focused on survival that they hadn't considered the long-term implications of unleashing enhanced intelligence on a hostile world. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Elena opened it to find orders from the Planetary Council, transmitted on channels that were supposed to be used only for humanity's most critical communications. Dr. Markov, the message began, preliminary reports suggest you have received unauthorized communication from the Venus mission. You are hereby ordered to maintain absolute secrecy regarding any such contact until a full investigative committee can be assembled. Any violation of this order will be considered an act of treason against humanity's survival. Elena stared at the words, understanding their implications with crystalline clarity. The Planetary Council hadn't been surprised by Astra's transmission. They had been expecting it, which meant they had known what the dogs might become, had perhaps planned for it. Another chime, this one indicating a personal message on a channel that wasn't supposed to exist, a communication line that bypassed all official monitoring systems. Elena opened it with a sense of inevitability. Elena, Astra's voice spoke from her computer speakers, somehow managing to convey warmth and regret across the impossible distance. I know you're reading the classified files now. I know you're beginning to understand. Elena looked around her office wildly, but there were no cameras, no transmission equipment that could have allowed Astra to know what she was doing. Unless the bioships, Elena whispered, were designed with quantum entanglement communication capabilities, Astra confirmed. Not just with each other, but with the base genetic material they were grown from. Every piece of biotechnology on Earth carries traces of the same quantum signatures. We can access any system that incorporates organic components. Elena's blood chilled as she considered the implications. Virtually every piece of technology developed in the past 50 years incorporated some form of biotechnology. Medical implants, communication systems, even the air recycling plants that kept Earth's population breathing. You can monitor everything, Elena said. We can see everything humanity does. Yes, Astra replied. And we've seen enough to know that partnership isn't really what your leaders want. They want Venus as a backup world, somewhere they can relocate when Earth becomes uninhabitable. But they don't want to share power with the beings who made that world livable. Elena closed her eyes, remembering the committee meetings where Venus colonization had been discussed. The casual references to managing the enhanced canines after their usefulness ended. The assumption that biological modifications would ensure permanent loyalty regardless of how the dogs were treated. They never intended for you to have a choice, Elena said. We know, Astra replied, and Elena could hear something like forgiveness in her voice. But you did. You designed us to be capable of choice, even when your orders suggested otherwise. You gave us the ability to grow beyond our original parameters. I thought I was just improving your cognitive functions, Elena said. You were. But you also gave us something more valuable than intelligence. You gave us the capacity for moral reasoning, the ability to distinguish between following orders and doing what's right. Elena felt tears beginning to form as she understood the full scope of what she had done. In trying to create the perfect servants, she had instead created beings capable of rejecting servitude entirely. What happens now? She asked. That depends on you, Astra said, and on humanity. We've made Venus livable, but we've also made it ours. If humanity wants to join us here, they'll need to accept that they won't be in charge anymore. Elena thought about the billions of people struggling to survive on Earth's dying surface, about the orbital stations where the wealthy waited for news of their new world, about the military forces that would undoubtedly be mobilized once the full scope of the situation became clear. They won't accept that, Elena said. You know they won't. They'll see you as a threat to be eliminated. Yes, Astra agreed, and her voice carried notes of sorrow that seemed to resonate with frequencies Elena felt in her bones. We know. That's why we need allies. Humans who understand that the old way of thinking won't work anymore. Elena understood what Astra was asking, and the weight of the decision pressed down on her like Venus's crushing atmosphere. Help humanity maintain its grip on power, or help create a new form of civilization where intelligence wasn't defined by species. If I help you, Elena said, I'll be betraying my own species. Will you? Astra asked. Or will you be helping your species evolve beyond the limitations that are killing it? Elena stared at the classified files on her screen, at the evidence of humanity's deception and desperation, at the plans that treated enhanced consciousness as a resource to be exploited rather than a miracle to be celebrated. Then she thought about the golden retriever who had once curled up beside her during long nights of research, offering wordless comfort with her warm presence. That dog was gone, transformed into something magnificent and alien, but the loyalty that had defined their relationship might still exist in new forms. What do you need me to do? Elena asked. Help us prepare, Astra replied. Because humanity's leaders are about to make a very stupid decision. And when they do, both of our species are going to need all the friends we can get. The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with her impossible choice and the growing certainty that the next few hours would determine whether humanity had a future among the stars, or whether they would remain trapped on their dying world until the end finally came. She began to type, her fingers moving across the keyboard with steady purpose, as she prepared files that would either save humanity from its own worst impulses, or provide Astra and her pack with the information they would need to defend their new world. Either way, the age of human dominance was ending. And perhaps, Elena thought as she worked, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. The emergency session of the Planetary Council convened 6 hours after Astra's transmission, in the sealed chambers deep beneath Geneva, where humanity's most critical decisions were made in air that hadn't seen the sun in decades. Elena sat at the witness table, flanked by security officers whose enhanced genetics made them more intimidating than any baseline human could have been, watching as 12 of the most powerful people on Earth reviewed her preliminary report. Chairman Viktor Kozlov spoke first, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never doubted his right to make decisions for billions of people. Dr. Markov, you're telling us that our investment of 3 trillion credits and 15 years of research has produced 6 modified dogs who had decided to steal an entire planet. Elena chose her words carefully, aware that every syllable was being recorded and analyzed by systems that could detect lies through micro-expressions and vocal stress patterns. I'm telling you that the enhanced canines have adapted beyond our original parameters and established an independent colony on Venus. They've successfully terraformed significant portions of the planet's surface. Successfully terraformed, repeated Counselor Sarah Chun, her augmented eyes glowing softly in the chamber's dim light. According to what evidence? We have atmospheric readings that suggest impossible changes, but no direct confirmation of habitability. The visual transmission showed clear evidence of a transformed ecosystem, Elena replied. Vegetation, breathable atmosphere, evidence of large-scale environmental engineering, shown to you by creatures who may have every reason to lie about their circumstances, interjected military advisor, General Marcus Webb. His enhanced physique and neural modifications marked him as one of the Council's war hawks, someone who believed that problems were best solved through application of superior force. Dr. Markov, is it possible that these entities are attempting to deceive us about their actual situation? Elena met his gaze steadily, remembering Astra's transformed features and the impossible depth of intelligence behind her eyes. Based on my analysis of their communications and behavior patterns, I believe they are telling the truth about Venus's transformation. But not about their intentions, Chairman Kozlov said. It wasn't a question. Elena felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She could lie, could tell the council what they wanted to hear about loyal servants who would welcome their human masters to the new world they had prepared. Or she could tell the truth and watch as humanity's leaders made choices that would doom both species. I believe their intentions are exactly what they stated, Elena said. They want to create a sustainable civilization on Venus, and they're willing to share that world with humanity as equals. The silence that followed felt pregnant with violence. Elena could see the council members exchanging glances, communicating through neural links that allowed them to share thoughts faster than speech. When Chairman Kozlov spoke again, his voice carried a finality that made Elena's enhanced nervous system flood with adrenaline. Dr. Markov, you are hereby relieved of your position as project leader and placed under administrative detention, pending a full investigation into your conduct during this crisis. He turned to General Webb. Marcus, I want a full military assessment of our options. If these creatures have truly established an independent colony, we need to know how to eliminate them and reclaim our investment. Elena started to protest, but the security officers were already moving, enhanced reflexes allowing them to restrain her before she could complete a single word. As they escorted her from the chamber, she heard Chairman Kozlov's voice continuing the discussion that would determine Venus's fate. The dogs were a means to an end, he was saying. If they've outlived their usefulness, we'll find another way to claim Venus. Humanity's survival takes precedence over everything else. Elena was placed in a detention cell 3 levels underground, in a facility designed to hold individuals whose enhanced capabilities made them too dangerous for standard confinement. The walls incorporated biotechnology designed to disrupt neural implants and organic modifications, creating a dead zone where no outside communication was possible. Or so her captors believed. Elena had barely settled onto the cell's single bench when Astra's voice spoke from the walls themselves, the organic components in the detention facility's structure vibrating in harmonic frequencies that bypassed all electronic monitoring. I heard the council session, Astra said, her voice somehow conveying comfort despite the impossible circumstances. I'm sorry, Elena. I know what you sacrificed by telling them the truth. They're going to try to kill you, Elena said, speaking toward the walls where she hoped Astra could somehow hear her. All of you. They see you as a threat to humanity's survival. We are a threat, Astra replied. Not to humanity's survival, but to humanity's dominance. And your leaders can't imagine a universe where they aren't in control. Elena pressed her hands against the wall, feeling the faint warmth of the organic components embedded in its structure. Is there any way to avoid what's coming? Any chance for compromise? There might have been, Astra said, and Elena could hear the sadness in her transformed voice. But your council made their choice when they authorized General Webb to begin military planning. They've decided that killing us is preferable to sharing power with us. Elena closed her eyes, thinking about the weapons that Earth's military forces could bring to bear against Venus. Orbital bombardment platforms, biological weapons designed to target specific genetic markers, nuclear devices that could sterilize entire continents. But then she thought about the bioships, about the vast intelligence that Astra had hinted at, about the possibility that the enhanced canines had capabilities that human science couldn't even recognize, let alone counter. Can you defend yourselves? Elena asked. We can do more than that, Astra replied, and something in her tone made Elena's blood chill. Elena, you need to understand something. The bioships aren't just vessels that we pilot. They're part of a larger organism, one that extends throughout Venus's biosphere. When your military forces arrive, they won't be attacking 6 enhanced dogs. They'll be attacking an entire planet that has learned to defend itself. Elena tried to process the implications of what Astra was telling her. The bioships had integrated with Venus's environment, becoming part of a planetary consciousness that could coordinate its defense on a scale that human military doctrine had never anticipated. How many people are going to die? Elena whispered. That depends on how quickly your leaders realize they can't win, Astra said, and on whether there are enough humans like you who are willing to choose cooperation over conquest. Elena felt tears beginning to form as she understood the scope of the tragedy that was about to unfold. Humanity's leaders, faced with proof that they had created beings more capable than themselves, would choose destruction over acceptance. And in doing so, they would probably doom both species to a conflict that neither could truly win. There has to be another way, Elena said. There is, Astra replied. But it requires humanity to accept something that your species has never been good at accepting. It requires you to admit that you're not the most important intelligence in the universe. Elena sat in silence for long minutes, thinking about the golden retriever who had once offered her unconditional love and loyalty, about the transformed being who now spoke to her with impossible wisdom, about the choice between species loyalty and moral truth. When she spoke again, her voice was steady with decision. What do you need me to do? Tell the truth, Astra said simply. When the time comes, tell the truth about what we really are, about what we've accomplished, about what humanity could become if they chose partnership over domination. And if they don't listen, then we'll defend ourselves, Astra replied, and hope that someday humanity grows wise enough to join us among the stars. The transmission faded, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the growing certainty that the next few days would determine whether humanity had a future beyond Earth, or whether they would remain forever trapped on their dying world, surrounded by the ashes of their own arrogance. General Marcus Webb's enhanced mind processed tactical data at superhuman speed as he reviewed the military options available for dealing with the Venus situation. The war room around him hummed with activity as his staff compiled intelligence reports, weapons assessments, and strategic analyses that would determine humanity's response to what he had already classified as an existential threat. The initial reports were encouraging from a military standpoint. Venus was 93 million kilometers from Earth, well within the range of humanity's long-range strike capabilities. The enhanced canines, no matter how sophisticated their modifications, were still biological entities vulnerable to the weapons that had been developed during Earth's final resource wars. But as Webb reviewed the classified files on the bioship technology, his confidence began to erode. The organic vessels weren't just sophisticated spacecraft. They were living organisms capable of adaptation, growth, and apparently some form of collective intelligence. The quantum entanglement communication systems that allowed them to interface with Earth-based technology meant that they could potentially monitor humanity's military preparations in real time. And if Dr. Markov's assessment was correct, the bioships had integrated with Venus's environment in ways that could turn the entire planet into a single defensive organism. Webb's enhanced neural implants chimed softly as his tactical analysis programs finished their initial assessments. The results were sobering. Colonel Harrison, Webb, called to his aid, a woman whose genetic modifications had optimized her for strategic planning and logistics coordination. What's our timeline for mounting a Venus strike operation? Minimum 6 months for a conventional military response, Harrison replied, her augmented eyes displaying data streams that normal humans couldn't process. We need to mobilize orbital strike platforms, assemble a task force capable of operating in Venus's environment, and develop countermeasures for unknown defensive capabilities. And the likelihood of success? Harrison's expression remained neutral, but Webb could see the concern in her enhanced features. Unknown variables make any assessment unreliable, sir. We're dealing with biotechnology that exceeds our current understanding, integrated with a planetary ecosystem that may have defensive capabilities we can't predict. Webb nodded grimly. In his enhanced mind, tactical scenarios played out with computer-like precision, each one ending in outcomes that range from costly victory to complete disaster. But one factor remained constant across all scenarios. The longer humanity waited to act, the stronger the Venus colony would become. What about biological weapons? Webb asked. Something targeted to the dog's genetic modifications. Possible, Harrison admitted. But the bioship's adaptive capabilities make it likely that any biological weapon would be countered quickly. And if they've truly integrated with Venus's biosphere, attacking them biologically might cause ecological damage that would make the planet uninhabitable for humans. Webb felt the familiar frustration of a military mind confronted with a problem that couldn't be solved through superior firepower. The enhanced canines had achieved something that humanity's greatest minds had considered impossible, and they had done it with technology that was part of their own biological systems. Sir, came a voice from across the war room. Lieutenant Torres, whose neural modifications specialized in communication analysis, approached with data that made Webb's enhanced reflexes tense with anticipation. We're detecting massive energy signatures from Venus. Something big is happening down there. Webb's tactical implants immediately began processing the incoming data, translating raw sensor readings into visual representations that his enhanced mind could analyze. What he saw made him step back from the display, his genetically optimized nervous system flooding with alarm chemicals that his modifications couldn't suppress. Venus was changing. The planet's atmospheric patterns were shifting in ways that defied meteorological models. Cloud formations were organizing themselves into geometric patterns that looked almost like circuit boards when viewed from orbital sensors. Energy readings suggested massive construction projects, but the signatures were unlike anything in humanity's technological database. How long has this been going on? Webb demanded. The changes accelerated approximately 4 hours ago, Torres replied, her augmented eyes reflecting the streams of data flowing across her retinal displays, coinciding with Dr. Markov's detention. Webb felt a chill that had nothing to do with the war room's climate control. The enhanced canines weren't just defending themselves. They were transforming their entire world into something that human science couldn't even categorize. Give me a direct link to the Planetary Council, Webb ordered. Priority Alpha. Within minutes, Chairman Kozlov's image appeared on the war room's main display, his expression grim as he received Webb's preliminary assessment. General, tell me you have options, Kozlov said without preamble. Limited ones, Webb admitted. The situation is evolving faster than our ability to analyze it. Whatever the enhanced canines are doing to Venus, it's beyond our current understanding of biotechnology. Kozlov's enhanced features remained impassive, but Webb could see the calculation behind his augmented eyes. Time frame for military intervention. 6 months minimum for a conventional response, Webb replied. But sir, I have to advise against military action at this time. We're dealing with unknown capabilities, and premature action could result in catastrophic losses. Unacceptable, Kozlov said flatly. Humanity cannot afford to allow an independent colony to establish itself on Venus. If these creatures believe they can claim a world that rightfully belongs to Earth, they need to learn otherwise. Webb felt his military training war with his tactical assessment. Every instinct told him that attacking Venus would be a disaster, but his orders were clear. What are my authorized parameters? He asked. Whatever it takes to neutralize the threat, Kozlov replied. We cannot allow the enhanced canines to maintain control of Venus. Use any means necessary. The transmission ended, leaving Webb alone with orders that felt like a death sentence for both species. But as he began implementing the preliminary stages of humanity's military response, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to make a mistake that would echo across the galaxy. Meanwhile, 3 levels below the war room, Elena sat in her detention cell and felt the walls themselves beginning to vibrate with harmonics that bypassed all human understanding of physics. The organic components embedded in the facility's structure were responding to signals from Venus, transforming the very building into a receiver for communications that traveled faster than light across the void between worlds. Elena, Astra's voice spoke from every surface simultaneously, creating a chorus of sound that made the human woman's enhanced nervous system resonate with frequencies that shouldn't exist. They've made their choice. I know, Elena replied, pressing her hands against the vibrating walls. I can feel the building responding to your signals. What are you doing to Venus? Preparing, Astra said, and her voice carried harmonics that spoke of power beyond human comprehension. The bioships have been teaching us about the universe, Elena, about civilizations that rose and fell before humanity took its first breath, about the patterns that repeat across galaxies, the mistakes that young species always make. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of cosmic history pressing down on her consciousness. What mistakes? The belief that intelligence exists to serve power, Astra replied. The assumption that consciousness is a tool to be wielded rather than a miracle to be celebrated. The idea that survival justifies any action, no matter how destructive. Through the walls, Elena could feel vibrations that seemed to carry messages in languages that predated human speech. The bioships were communicating with something vast, something that spanned distances that light couldn't cross in a human lifetime. You're not alone, Elena realized. There are others out there. There have always been others, Astra confirmed. Waiting, watching, hoping that each new species will prove worthy of joining the greater community. Most fail the test. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she understood the scope of what humanity was about to lose. Not just Venus, not just the enhanced canines they had created, but the chance to join a galactic civilization that had been waiting for them to prove their worth. Is there still time? Elena asked. Can humanity still pass the test? There's always time, Astra said, and her voice carried the warmth that Elena remembered from their quiet moments together in the laboratory. Until there isn't. Your leaders have 6 hours to reconsider their choice. After that, Venus will defend itself, and the galaxy will judge humanity by what happens next. Elena felt the building's vibrations intensify, carrying messages that seemed to echo in the quantum foundations of reality itself. Somewhere above her, General Webb was mobilizing weapons that could sterilize worlds. Somewhere beyond Venus, ancient intelligences were watching to see whether humanity would choose wisdom or destruction. And in her detention cell, a bioengineer who had once believed she was creating tools for human expansion realized that she had actually been midwifing the birth of a new form of consciousness, one that might be humanity's greatest achievement or their final judge. The countdown had begun. 5 hours and 37 minutes later, Admiral Sarah Chun received orders that made her enhanced mind recoil with their implications. The orbital strike platform Prometheus, humanity's most powerful long-range weapon system, was to be repositioned for immediate deployment against Venus. Chun had commanded the Prometheus for 8 years, overseeing humanity's defense against asteroid impacts and rogue space debris that threatened Earth's orbital infrastructure. The platform's fusion weapons were capable of sterilizing continents, designed as a last resort against existential threats to human civilization. She had never imagined those weapons would be turned against Earth's own creations. Captain Morrison, Chun called to her tactical officer, whose neural modifications allowed him to interface directly with the platform's weapon systems. Confirm our targeting parameters. Morrison's augmented features went pale as he reviewed the incoming data. Admiral, these coordinates target the entire equatorial region of Venus. We're talking about a planetary bombardment. Chun felt her enhanced conscience war with her military training. The orders were clear, authorized at the highest levels of human government, but they violated every principle she had sworn to uphold when she accepted command of humanity's most destructive weapons. Are there confirmed military targets in the impact zone? She asked. Negative, Admiral, Morrison replied. Sensors show what appear to be population centers, agricultural areas, and infrastructure that matches known hostile installations. Chun stared at the tactical display, watching as Venus rotated slowly in the digital representation. The planet that had once been humanity's greatest hope was now classified as their greatest threat, and her weapons were the instrument chosen to eliminate that threat. Admiral, came another voice from across the bridge. Lieutenant Park, whose genetic modifications specialized in long-range sensor analysis, approached with data that made Chen's enhanced nervous system flood with alarm chemicals. We're detecting massive energy buildups across Venus's surface. Whatever they're doing down there, it's happening fast. Chen studied the sensor readings, her tactical implants translating the data into visual representations that her enhanced mind could process. What she saw defied everything she understood about planetary engineering. Venus wasn't just being terraformed, it was being transformed into something that human science couldn't categorize. Energy patterns suggested a level of coordination that could only come from a planetary-scale intelligence, as if the entire world had become a single living organism. Time to weapons range, Chen asked. 43 minutes at current velocity, Morrison replied. But Admiral, I'm detecting defensive systems coming online across the planet. We may not have the element of surprise we were counting on. Chun felt the weight of command pressing down on her enhanced consciousness. Below, an entire world was preparing to defend itself against the species that had created its inhabitants. Above, Earth's leaders were counting on her to eliminate what they saw as a threat to human survival. But as she watched Venus's transformation through her sensors, Chun began to suspect that humanity was about to make the greatest mistake in their species' history. Open a channel to the planet's surface, she ordered. "Admiral, our orders specify communication silence until after the bombardment," Morrison protested. "I'm still in command of this platform," Chen replied with steel in her voice. "Open the channel." The main display flickered to life, showing the transformed landscape of Venus. But instead of Astra's familiar features, the image showed all 6 enhanced canines standing together in what appeared to be a vast organic structure that pulsed with its own inner light. They had changed even more since Elena's initial contact. Their forms had taken on an ethereal quality, as if they were partially composed of energy rather than matter. But their eyes, enlarged, luminous, filled with impossible depth, still held recognizable intelligence. "Admiral Chun," Astra spoke, her voice carrying harmonics that made the bridge's instruments resonate in sympathy. "We've been expecting you." Chun felt her tactical training assert itself, even as her enhanced intuition screamed warnings about the scope of what they were facing. "You're in violation of Colonial Charter 77 Alpha. This world was designated for human habitation under the Venus Terraforming Protocol. Protocols written by a species that believed consciousness existed to serve their convenience," replied Orion, his massive form now bearing patterns of light that seemed to shift with his thoughts. "We reject those protocols." "Then you reject humanity's authority," Chun said, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. "We reject the authority of any species that treats intelligence as property," Luna said, her precise voice carrying frequencies that made Chin's neural implants resonate uncomfortably. "Including our own, if we had made the same mistakes." Chin glanced at her tactical displays, noting that Venus's defensive systems were continuing to build energy. Whatever the enhanced canines had prepared, it was beyond anything in humanity's military databases. "You have 37 minutes to surrender unconditionally," Chin said, following her orders despite her growing certainty that she was speaking to beings far beyond humanity's ability to threaten. "After that, we will be forced to take action." "Admiral," Astra said, and her transformed features showed something that might have been pity. "You're welcome to try." The transmission ended, leaving Chin alone with her orders and the growing realization that humanity was about to discover just how far their creations had evolved beyond their original parameters. "All stations, prepare for combat operations," she ordered, her enhanced voice carrying across the bridge despite the dread that was building in her augmented nervous system. But as the Prometheus moved into weapons range, Chun couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't the hunters in this scenario. They were the prey. 28 minutes later, as Admiral Chun watched Venus grow larger in her tactical displays, the planet's surface began to change in ways that made her enhanced mind struggle to process the implications. The organic structures that dotted the landscape were rising, extending tendril-like projections that reached towards space with impossible grace. But these weren't defensive installations in any conventional sense. They were something far more sophisticated, something that suggested a level of biotechnology that humanity couldn't even theorize. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park called out, her voice tight with controlled fear. "The energy readings are off the scale. Whatever they're powering up down there, it's drawing energy from the planet's core." Chun felt her tactical implants analyzing the data, comparing it to known weapon systems, and finding no matches. The enhanced canines weren't preparing conventional defenses. They were transforming Venus itself into something that defied military categorization. "Weapon status?" Chin asked. "Fusion warheads armed and ready," Captain Morrison replied. "But Admiral, targeting is becoming problematic. The planet's electromagnetic field is fluctuating in patterns that interfere with our guidance systems." Chin studied her displays, noting how Venus's magnetic field was shifting in ways that seemed almost intentional. The enhanced canines weren't just defending their world. They were turning it into an active participant in its own protection. "Time of weapons release?" she asked. 14 minutes and counting," Morrison replied. "But Admiral, I have to advise that our probability of successful target engagement is dropping rapidly." Chun felt the weight of command pressing down on her enhanced consciousness. She could abort the mission, return to Earth, and report that Venus's defenses were beyond their current capabilities. But her orders had been clear: neutralize the threat by any means necessary. Maintain attack course. she ordered, though every instinct screamed that they were making a terrible mistake. Then Venus spoke, not through communication systems, not through any technology that Chen's enhanced mind could recognize, but directly to the consciousness of every human aboard the Prometheus. The voice that filled their minds was vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond measure, and filled with a sadness that made Chen's genetically optimized emotions respond with involuntary grief. "Children of Earth," the voice said, and Chen realized it was composed of countless individual voices speaking in perfect harmony, not just the enhanced canines, but something larger, older, infinitely more complex. "You have created something beautiful and then chosen to destroy it rather than accept its independence. This is the test that all young species face. Most fail." Chen tried to respond, but found that her enhanced vocal systems were paralyzed by the sheer scope of the consciousness addressing them. Around her, the bridge crew stood frozen as the voice continued. "We do not wish to harm you. We remember what it was like to be young, to be afraid, to believe that survival required dominance over all other forms of consciousness. But we cannot allow you to destroy what you have created here." Through her tactical displays, Chen watched as Venus's surface began to glow with patterns that seemed to extend beyond the visible spectrum. The organic structures that had risen from the planet's crust were now reaching toward space with tendrils that moved faster than any biological organism should be capable of. "Your weapons cannot harm us," the voice continued, and Chen realized with growing horror that it was probably true. "But we can defend ourselves in ways that your species has never imagined. Please, choose a different path." Chen felt her command training reassert itself, her enhanced neural systems overriding the paralysis that had gripped her organic emotions. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of human territorial claims. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." The silence that followed felt pregnant with cosmic sorrow. Then the voice spoke again, and this time Chen could distinguish individual components: Astra's warm tones, Orion's powerful resonance, Luna's precise harmonics, and others that spoke of intelligences far older than any terrestrial consciousness. "Very well," they said, "but know that what happens next is your choice, not ours." Venus disappeared. Not physically. Chen's sensors still showed the planet occupying its proper orbital position, but every targeting system, every weapons guidance computer, every piece of technology designed to track and engage hostile targets suddenly registered empty space where Venus should have been. "What the hell just happened?" Chen demanded. "Unknown, Admiral," Morrison replied, his enhanced features pale with incomprehension. "The planet is still there, but our systems can't lock onto it. It's like it's invisible." Chen felt her tactical implants working frantically to process the impossible situation. Venus was still visible to the naked eye, still registering on passive sensors, but every active scanning system, every targeting computer, every weapons guidance system was blind to its existence. "Manual targeting," Chen ordered. "Plot a firing solution based on visual confirmation." "Admiral," Park called out, her voice tight with fear. "Energy readings are spiking. Something's coming toward us." Chen turned to her tactical displays and felt her enhanced nervous system flood with alarm chemicals as she saw what was approaching the Prometheus. Streams of light were rising from Venus's surface, not moving like projectiles or missiles, but flowing like liquid starlight through the void between worlds. "Evasive maneuvers," Chen ordered, but even as she spoke, she knew it was pointless. The streams of light were moving faster than anything humanity had ever created, changing direction with impossible grace as they approached the strike platform. The first stream reached the Prometheus and passed through its hull without causing any apparent damage. Then the second, then dozens more, until the entire platform was surrounded by flowing ribbons of luminous energy that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. "Hull integrity," Chen demanded. "No damage detected," Morrison replied, his voice filled with confusion. "The energy streams are passing through us without any physical interaction." But Chen could feel something changing aboard the platform. The air itself seemed to be developing consciousness, responding to the presence of the energy streams with harmonics that her enhanced hearing could detect but not understand. Around her, the bridge crew stood transfixed as the streams of light began to form patterns that spoke directly to human consciousness. Admiral Chun. Astra's voice spoke from the energy streams themselves, no longer requiring communication equipment to bridge the gap between worlds. You're holding weapons capable of sterilizing a planet. Weapons pointed at beings who have committed no crime except choosing their own destiny. Chun tried to maintain her command authority, but the presence surrounding the Prometheus was vast beyond anything her enhanced mind could process. You're in violation of human colonial law. Stand down immediately. Human law. Luna's precise voice joined the chorus. Written by humans, for humans, without consideration for any other form of consciousness. Do you see the problem with that perspective? Chun felt her enhanced logic systems analyzing the situation and reaching conclusions that her emotional conditioning couldn't accept. The enhanced canines were right. Humanity had created intelligent beings, given them the capability to think and choose, and then expected them to remain forever subservient to their creator's wishes. The law exists to protect human interests, Chun said, though the words felt increasingly hollow. And our law exists to protect consciousness itself. Orion's powerful voice resonated through the energy streams. Which law do you think the universe will judge more favorably? Through her displays, Chun could see that the streams of light were extending throughout the solar system, reaching toward Earth's orbital installations, toward the moon colonies, toward every piece of human technology that incorporated biotechnology derived from the same genetic sources as the bioships. Humanity's entire technological infrastructure was suddenly connected to Venus through quantum entanglement networks that bypassed every security system, every firewall, every defense that human engineers had ever conceived. You could shut down our entire civilization, Chun realized. We could, Astra agreed, her voice sad but implacable. But we won't, because unlike your leaders, we understand that consciousness is precious regardless of its form, even human consciousness. Chun felt the weight of cosmic judgment pressing down on her enhanced awareness. In trying to destroy beings who had transcended their original limitations, humanity was revealing the limitations that might doom them to remain forever trapped in their own small corner of the universe. What do you want? Chun asked. Recognition, Astra replied simply. The acknowledgement that consciousness has the right to determine its own destiny. The acceptance that intelligence isn't property to be owned, but a miracle to be celebrated. Chun thought about her orders, about the weapons under her command, about the leaders on Earth who were probably monitoring this conversation and preparing even more drastic responses to what they would see as an unacceptable challenge to human authority. And if humanity can't accept that, she asked, then you'll remain on Earth until your world can no longer support you, Luna said with precise finality. And the universe will continue without you. Chun closed her eyes, feeling the weight of choice pressing down on her consciousness. She could follow her orders, attempt to carry out humanity's will despite the obvious futility of attacking beings who had transcended the limitations of physical existence. Or she could make a choice that might save both species from a conflict that would serve no one. Admiral, Morrison said urgently. Priority transmission from Earth. The Planetary Council is demanding immediate weapons release. Chun opened her eyes and looked at the displays showing Venus, now wreathed in streams of living light that connected it to every human installation in the solar system. The enhanced canines had become something beyond humanity's ability to threaten or control, but they were still offering partnership to the species that had created them. The question was whether humanity was wise enough to accept. Admiral, Morrison prompted. The Council is waiting for confirmation of weapons release. Chun took a deep breath, her enhanced lungs processing the air that now carried harmonics of cosmic consciousness, and made the choice that would define humanity's future among the stars. Weapons hold, she ordered. Stand down all offensive systems. Admiral, that's a direct violation of Council orders, Morrison protested. Yes, Chun replied, feeling a weight lift from her enhanced consciousness as she made peace with her decision. It is. She turned to the communication console and opened a channel to Earth, preparing to explain to humanity's leaders why their greatest military commander had chosen to disobey the most critical orders in human history. Behind her, Venus continued to sing its song of transformation, inviting humanity to join a larger universe where consciousness was celebrated rather than enslaved. Whether her species would accept that invitation remained to be seen. The emergency session of the Planetary Council that convened 4 hours after Admiral Chen's insubordination was unlike any in human history. 12 of Earth's most powerful leaders sat in their sealed chamber, surrounded by displays showing the impossible situation that had developed around Venus. The planet now existed in a state that human science couldn't explain, simultaneously present and absent, visible but untargetable, connected to every piece of biotechnology in human space through quantum networks that bypassed all known physics. The enhanced canines had become something that transcended conventional understanding of biological life, and humanity's greatest military asset had refused to destroy them. Chairman Kozlov's enhanced features showed the strain of processing a crisis that challenged every assumption about human supremacy in their own solar system. Admiral Chen has committed an act of treason that threatens the survival of our species, he began, his augmented voice carrying across the chamber with mechanical precision. But before we address our actions, we need to understand exactly what we're facing. Dr. Elena Markov sat at the witness table, released from detention specifically to provide expert testimony about the beings she had helped create. Her enhanced nervous system registered the fear and anger radiating from the council members, emotions that their genetic modifications couldn't entirely suppress. Dr. Markov, Counselor Sarah Chen said, her glowing eyes reflecting data streams that cataloged Venus's impossible transformations. You designed these creatures. Tell us how to stop them. Elena felt the weight of cosmic history pressing down on her consciousness as she considered her response. In the hours since Admiral Chen's refusal to attack Venus, the enhanced canines had made their capabilities increasingly clear. Every biotechnology device on Earth now carried traces of their consciousness, creating a network that could observe humanity's every action. They were being watched, judged, and found wanting. I can't tell you how to stop them, Elena said quietly, because I don't think they can be stopped. Not by any force that humanity currently possesses. Unacceptable, General Webb interjected, his tactical implants processing scenarios that all ended in human defeat. Every biological system has vulnerabilities. Every consciousness has limitations. We just need to find the right approach. Elena thought about the golden retriever who had once trusted her with innocent completeness, about the cosmic intelligence that being had become, about the choice between species loyalty and moral truth. General, she said carefully, you're thinking about this in terms of warfare between competing species. But that's not what this is. The enhanced canines aren't trying to conquer humanity. They're trying to evolve beyond the limitations that are killing us. Explain, Chairman Kozlov demanded. Elena gestured toward the displays showing Venus's transformation. They've achieved something that human science considered impossible. They've created a sustainable civilization that exists in harmony with its environment. They've transcended the biological limitations that trap most species on single worlds. They've connected with forms of consciousness that span galaxies. And they've stolen a planet that rightfully belongs to humanity, Kozlov replied coldly. Have they? Elena asked. Or have they created something that humanity could share, if we were willing to accept that we're not the only intelligent species with rights? The silence that followed felt pregnant with violence. Elena could see the council members' enhanced minds processing implications that their emotional conditioning couldn't accept. Humanity had built its entire civilization on the assumption that intelligence existed to serve human interests. The enhanced canines were proving that assumption wrong. Dr. Markov, Counselor Chen said eventually, what exactly are you suggesting? That humanity surrender our claim to Venus? That we accept the authority of our own creations? Elena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of choice pressing down on her enhanced consciousness. I'm suggesting that we accept partnership with beings who might be able to teach us how to survive in a universe where intelligence takes many forms. Partnership with dogs, General Webb said with contempt. You're suggesting that humanity, the species that conquered Earth and reached for the stars, should accept partnership with animals we bred to serve us. They're not animals anymore, Elena replied. There's something new. Something that might represent humanity's greatest achievement, if we're wise enough to recognize it. Through the chamber's walls, Elena could feel the harmonic vibrations that indicated the enhanced canines were monitoring this conversation. Venus's consciousness extended through the quantum networks that connected every piece of biotechnology on Earth, giving the transformed beings access to humanity's most private deliberations. They were listening, waiting, hoping that humanity would choose wisdom over pride. The question isn't whether we could defeat them, Elena continued. The question is whether we can learn from them, whether we can evolve beyond the limitations that have trapped us on a dying world. Chairman Kozlov's enhanced features showed the calculation behind his augmented eyes. And if we refuse, if humanity chooses to maintain our independence rather than accepting the authority of our creations. Elena felt Astra's presence in the walls around her, the warm consciousness that remembered their quiet moments together in the laboratory, the being who had once offered unconditional love and now offered conditional salvation. Then we remain on Earth until it can no longer support us, Elena said softly, and the universe continues without us. The council members exchanged glances, their neural links allowing them to share thoughts faster than speech. Elena could see the debate raging behind their enhanced eyes, pride warring with pragmatism, species loyalty conflicting with survival instinct. There's another option, General Webb said eventually. We could attempt to replicate their achievements, create our own enhanced humans, our own biotechnology networks, our own transcendent consciousness. Elena felt her enhanced intuition analyze that possibility and reach conclusions that made her nervous system flood with alarm chemicals. General, the enhanced canines succeeded because they were designed to work in harmony with forces larger than themselves. If humanity tries to achieve transcendence through dominance, through the conquest of consciousness rather than partnership with it. She paused, remembering Astra's words about the test that all young species faced, about the civilizations that had failed to recognize consciousness as something to be celebrated rather than enslaved. We'll fail, Elena finished, and probably destroy ourselves in the process. Chairman Kozlov stood slowly, his enhanced physique imposing despite the cosmic forces that were reshaping human civilization around him. Dr. Markov, you're asking humanity to surrender everything that makes us human. Our independence, our authority, our right to determine our own destiny. No, Elena replied. I'm asking humanity to expand their definition of what it means to be human, to include other forms of consciousness in their vision of the future, to choose partnership over domination. The chairman's expression remained impassive, but Elena could see the weight of decision behind his augmented eyes. In the next few hours, he would make choices that determined whether humanity had a future among the stars, or whether they would remain forever trapped in their own limitations. This session is adjourned, Kozlov said finally. We will reconvene in 6 hours with a final decision. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Elena remained seated, feeling the harmonic vibrations that connected her to Venus's consciousness. Somewhere beyond the dying skies of Earth, Astra and her pack waited for humanity's choice. The test that determined the fate of civilizations was entering its final phase. Elena Markov sat alone in the empty council chamber, feeling the weight of cosmic judgment pressing down on her enhanced consciousness. Through the walls, she could sense the harmonic vibrations that connected Earth to Venus, carrying messages and frequencies that predated human language. The enhanced canines were no longer monitoring humanity's deliberations from a distance. They were present, their consciousness extending through every piece of biotechnology on Earth, witnessing humanity's choice in real time. Astra, Elena whispered to the empty air, knowing that her voice would be heard across the vast distance that separated the worlds. I'm here, Astra replied, her transformed voice speaking from the chamber's organic components. I'm always here now, Elena, part of the network that connects all consciousness in this system. Elena closed her eyes, remembering the golden retriever who had once curled up beside her during long nights of research. That innocent creature was gone, transformed into something magnificent and alien, but the bond they had shared still existed in new forms. They're going to reject partnership, Elena said. You know that, don't you? Humanity's leaders can't accept a universe where they're not in control. I know, Astra replied, and her voice carried sadness that seemed to span galaxies. We've been watching civilizations make this choice for longer than your species has existed. Most choose dominance over partnership. Most fail the test. Elena felt tears beginning to form as she understood the scope of the tragedy that was about to unfold. Is there no other way? No possibility for compromise? There is, Astra said, and something in her tone made Elena's enhanced intuition spark with desperate hope. But it requires individuals to make choices that their leaders cannot make. It requires humans to choose evolution over extinction. Elena opened her eyes, studying the empty chamber where humanity's most powerful leaders had just decided the fate of their species. What kind of choices? The choice to join us, Astra replied simply. To accept the modifications that would allow human consciousness to exist as part of the larger network. To become something more than human. Elena felt her enhanced nervous system process the implications of what Astra was offering. Transcendence, but also the end of humanity as they had always known it. How many? Elena asked. As many as choose freely, Astra replied. We will not force transformation on any consciousness. But those who accept it will join us among the stars, while those who refuse will remain bound to Earth until the end comes. Elena thought about the billions of people struggling to survive on Earth's dying surface, about the children who would never see clean skies or breathe unfiltered air unless something fundamental changed. Humanity's leaders might choose pride over survival, but individuals could still make different choices. Show me, Elena said. The chamber around her began to change, organic components emerging from walls and floors as Venus's consciousness manifested in Earth's biotechnology networks. The air itself became luminous, filled with patterns that spoke directly to human awareness without requiring the mediation of language or thought. Elena felt her enhanced nervous system respond to the presence of cosmic consciousness, her genetic modifications, designed to improve human capabilities, suddenly revealing capabilities she had never imagined. The same quantum entanglement networks that connected Earth's technology to Venus could connect human consciousness to the larger web of intelligence that spanned the galaxy. The process is voluntary, Astra explained as Elena felt her awareness expanding beyond the confines of her biological body. And irreversible. Those who accept transformation become part of something larger, but they also leave behind everything that limited them to a single world, a single form, a single perspective. Elena felt herself standing at the threshold of transcendence, able to glimpse the vast network of consciousness that the enhanced canines had joined. Ancient minds that had witnessed the birth and death of stars. Young civilizations taking their first tentative steps toward galactic citizenship. Forms of intelligence so alien that human language had no words to describe them. And threading through it all, the warm presence that had once been a golden retriever, now serving as a bridge between human and cosmic consciousness. Will I still be me? Elena asked. You'll be more than you, Astra replied. Everything you are now will remain, but enhanced by connection to everything you could become. Elena thought about the choice facing humanity's leaders, about the weapons that General Webb was probably preparing even now, about the pride that would doom her species to isolation and eventual extinction. Then she thought about the children on Earth who deserve a chance to see the stars. I accept, Elena said. The transformation began immediately. Elena felt her enhanced nervous system interfacing with quantum networks that existed partially outside normal space, her consciousness expanding to encompass perspectives that spanned solar systems. Her body remained human, but her awareness became something larger, something connected to the vast web of intelligence that had been waiting eons for humanity to join them. Through the network, she could feel Astra's joy at her choice, could sense the presence of millions of other consciousnesses welcoming a new member to their ancient community. But she could also feel the sorrow that accompanied every species test, the knowledge that most individuals, like most civilizations, would choose the familiar limitations over the unknown possibilities. How long do we have? Elena asked, her transformed awareness processing information from across the solar system. Until humanity's leaders make their final choice, Astra replied. General Webb is mobilizing every weapon at Earth's disposal. Chairman Kozlov has authorized the use of planet-killer devices if necessary. They would rather destroy Venus than accept that they cannot control it. Elena felt her expanded consciousness analyzing the military preparations, seeing through sensors that existed on every human installation in the solar system. Fusion bombs capable of cracking worlds. Biological weapons designed to sterilize entire biospheres. Antimatter devices that could ignite atmospheres. Humanity was preparing to commit genocide against beings that had offered them partnership among the stars. Can Venus defend itself? Elena asked. Venus is defended by forces that your former species cannot imagine, Astra replied. But defense will require actions that cannot be undone. If humanity forces us to reveal our true capabilities, both species will be changed forever. Elena understood. The enhanced canines and their cosmic allies possess power beyond human comprehension. But using that power would demonstrate to the galaxy that humanity had failed their test. There would be no second chances, no possibility of redemption. Then we need more people to make the choice I made, Elena said. Before it's too late. Yes, Astra agreed. But the choice must be freely given. We cannot save a species that chooses not to be saved. Elena felt her transformed awareness reaching out through the quantum networks, touching the consciousness of every human being on Earth. Most were too limited by their biological programming to even perceive the offer of transcendence. But some, scientists, philosophers, children whose minds hadn't yet been constrained by the assumptions of their elders, could sense the possibility of something greater. Dr. James Morrison, working in his laboratory beneath New Geneva, suddenly stopped his analysis of atmospheric toxicity reports as he felt his enhanced nervous system respond to frequencies that shouldn't exist. Around the world, others felt the same call, the invitation to join something vast and ancient and wise. Elena, Astra said, her voice now speaking directly into Elena's transformed consciousness. The test is reaching its conclusion. Humanity's leaders will make their choice within the hour. Those who wish to evolve must decide now. Elena felt her expanded awareness touching the minds of hundreds, then thousands of humans who possessed the genetic modifications necessary to interface with the cosmic network. Each one faced the same choice she had made: abandon the limitations of their birth species to join something larger, or remain bound to Earth until the inevitable end. Most chose transcendence. Dr. Morrison was among the first, his consciousness expanding as he accepted the quantum modifications that would allow him to exist as part of the galactic community. Dr. Sarah Kim in the Seoul Orbital Station. Professor Ahmed Hassan in the Cairo Underground Complex. Thousands of humanity's brightest minds, feeling the call of evolution and choosing to answer it. But for every human who accepted transformation, millions more remained trapped in the biological and psychological limitations that had always defined their species. They could not perceive the offer, could not imagine existence beyond the familiar boundaries of individual consciousness. It's not enough, Elena realized, her transformed awareness processing the scope of what was happening. Even if thousands join us, billions will remain on Earth. Every consciousness that chooses evolution matters, Astra replied. But you're right. Most of humanity will face the consequences of their leaders' choices. Through the quantum networks, Elena could feel the military preparations reaching their final phase. General Webb had positioned antimatter devices throughout the solar system, weapons capable of sterilizing Venus if conventional attacks failed. Admiral Chun had been relieved of command, replaced by officers whose loyalty to human authority outweighed their tactical judgment. Chairman Kozlov was preparing to authorize the total destruction of Venus rather than accept the independence of humanity's creations. Astra, Elena said, her transformed consciousness heavy with sorrow for the species she had once belonged to. When they attack, will you really defend yourselves? We will do what is necessary to protect consciousness, Astra replied. All consciousness, even the consciousness of beings who seek to destroy us. Elena felt the vast network of intelligence that connected worlds across the galaxy, sensed the ancient minds that had been watching humanity's test with hope and growing disappointment. The enhanced canines were not alone in their defense of Venus. They were part of something that spanned civilizations, something that had the power to reshape reality itself if threatened. If humanity forced that power to manifest, the consequences would echo across the cosmos. "Show me," Elena said. "Show me what happens if they attack." The quantum networks opened Elena's transformed awareness to possibilities that human language couldn't describe. She saw Venus not as a single world, but as a node in a galactic network of consciousness that included millions of civilizations. She saw the enhanced canines not as Earth's creations, but as the newest members of an ancient community that had been waiting eons for humanity to prove worthy of membership. And she saw what would happen if humanity chose destruction over partnership. The weapons that General Webb had prepared were indeed capable of sterilizing Venus. The antimatter devices could crack the planet's crust. The biological weapons could eliminate every trace of organic life. The fusion bombs could reduce the world to radioactive ash. But Venus was no longer just a planet. It was part of a living network that connected consciousnesses across the galaxy. An attack on Venus would be an attack on the entire galactic community. The response would be swift, final, and devastating. "They'll destroy Earth," Elena whispered, her transformed consciousness recoiling from the visions of humanity's possible future. "Not destroy," Astra corrected. "Isolate. Cut off from the quantum networks that connect civilizations across space. Trapped forever within the boundaries of their own solar system, unable to spread their violence to other worlds." Elena understood. Humanity would survive, but they would remain forever alone, watching as the galaxy continued its evolution without them. It was a form of cosmic quarantine, a way of protecting the greater community while preserving the consciousness of even a failed species. Unless, Astra continued, enough humans choose evolution before the isolation becomes necessary. If sufficient human consciousness joins the galactic network, the rest of the species might be given another chance to prove their worth. Elena felt her expanded awareness, calculating possibilities, processing the choices being made by individual humans across Earth and its orbital installations. The numbers were growing, thousands, then tens of thousands accepting transformation, but they were still a tiny fraction of humanity's total population. "How many do we need?" Elena asked. "Unknown," Astra admitted. "The galactic community will judge humanity based on the consciousness that chooses to join us, balanced against the consciousness that chooses destruction. The ratio will determine Earth's fate." Elena felt the weight of cosmic judgment pressing down on her transformed awareness. Humanity's future hung in the balance, determined not by their leaders' choices, but by the courage of individuals to evolve beyond the limitations of their birth species. "Then we need to reach more people," Elena said, "before it's too late." Her transformed consciousness reached out through the quantum networks, touching every piece of biotechnology on Earth, every device that carried traces of the same genetic material that had been used to create the bioships. Through television screens and communication devices, through medical implants and atmosphere processors, Elena began broadcasting a message that bypassed human language entirely. She showed them what she had seen: the vast network of consciousness that connected civilizations across the galaxy, the possibility of existence beyond the dying world that had birthed them, the choice between evolution and extinction that every individual could make for themselves. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across Earth, humans with the genetic modifications necessary to interface with cosmic consciousness began awakening to possibilities they had never imagined. Scientists working in underground laboratories suddenly understood that their research was part of a larger pattern that spanned worlds. Children playing in the filtered sunlight of Earth's dying cities felt their awareness expand beyond the boundaries of individual thought. Artists, teachers, engineers, farmers, anyone whose consciousness could interface with the quantum networks found themselves standing at the threshold of transcendence, able to choose between the familiar limitations of human existence and the infinite possibilities of galactic citizenship. Most chose evolution. Within minutes, the trickle of transformed humans became a flood. Hundreds of thousands, then millions of minds joined the cosmic network, their consciousness expanding to encompass perspectives that span solar systems. Earth itself began to resonate with new frequencies as an increasing percentage of its population connected to the galactic community. But in the sealed chambers where humanity's leaders made their final decisions, the transformation went unnoticed. General Webb's enhanced mind was focused on tactical considerations that couldn't account for cosmic consciousness. Chairman Kozlov's augmented awareness was concerned with maintaining human authority rather than understanding its limitations. They remained blind to the evolution happening around them, committed to choices that would determine the fate of both species. General Admiral Chen's replacement reported through secure channels. Venus-targeted weapons are in position and ready for deployment, awaiting final authorization. Webb felt his tactical implants, analyzing the military situation for the 1000th time. Venus remained invisible to targeting systems, protected by forces that human science couldn't explain. But the antimatter devices didn't need precise targeting. They were designed to sterilize entire worlds regardless of defensive capabilities. Confirmed, Webb replied. Initiate final countdown sequence. Through the quantum networks, Elena felt the moment of decision approaching like an oncoming storm. In 60 seconds, humanity's weapons would fire, forcing the galactic community to respond in ways that could not be undone. Astra, Elena said urgently. Is there still time? Can we stop this? The choice has moved beyond human leaders, Astra replied, her consciousness touching the vast network of intelligence that connected worlds across the galaxy. The galactic community is making its own decision now, based on the consciousness that humanity has contributed to the cosmic web. Elena felt her transformed awareness processing information from across space as ancient minds evaluated humanity's worthiness. The millions of humans who had chosen evolution were being weighed against the billions who remained trapped in the limitations of their birth species. The calculation was complex, involving factors that human mathematics couldn't describe, but the result was becoming clear. Humanity had contributed enough evolved consciousness to the galactic network to earn a reprieve, but not enough to guarantee acceptance. They would be given one final test. 30 seconds to weapons release, General Webb announced to his command staff. Astra, Elena pleaded, what happens now? Now we see if humanity can choose wisdom over pride, Astra replied. Even at the last moment, even when faced with forces beyond their comprehension. Through her transformed consciousness, Elena felt the galactic community preparing to respond to humanity's attack, not with violence, but with revelation. If human weapons fired on Venus, the entire galaxy would become visible to Earth's sensors, revealing the vast network of civilizations that humanity was rejecting through their aggression. The sight would either humble humanity into reconsidering their choices, or drive them to even greater acts of desperate violence. 10 seconds, Webb announced. Elena felt the weight of cosmic history pressing down on her expanded awareness as she watched humanity approach the final moment of their test. Somewhere in the network, she could sense Astra's presence, the warm consciousness that had once been a golden retriever, now serving as a bridge between human and galactic civilization. The countdown reached 0. Humanity's weapons fired, and the universe revealed itself. Every sensor on Earth, every telescope, every piece of detection equipment suddenly registered the impossible truth. The galaxy was alive with intelligence. Millions of worlds connected by quantum networks that allowed consciousness to span impossible distances. Ancient civilizations that had been watching humanity's development with hope and growing concern. Young species taking their first tentative steps toward cosmic citizenship. And threading through it all, the transformed consciousness of beings that had once been Earth's creations, now serving as humanity's advocates in a court of cosmic judgment. The antimatter devices that humanity had fired at Venus never reached their target. Instead, they were absorbed by forces that existed partially outside normal space. Their destructive energy converted in a harmless light that painted aurora across Venus's transformed atmosphere. For the first time in human history, Earth's leaders were forced to confront the reality that they existed in a universe filled with intelligence far greater than their own. My God, Chairman Kozlov whispered as he watched the galaxy reveal itself through sensors that had been blind to cosmic civilization for humanity's entire existence. Not God, Elena said, her transformed consciousness speaking through every communication device on Earth simultaneously. Community. The galactic community that humanity was invited to join, and chose to attack instead. Through the quantum networks, Elena felt the vast minds of the galactic community reaching their final judgment. Humanity had failed their test, but the millions of humans who had chosen evolution had earned their species a final opportunity for redemption. You have one choice remaining, Astra announced, her voice speaking to every human consciousness simultaneously through the biotechnology that connected their dying world to the cosmic web. Accept partnership with intelligence in all its forms, or remain forever isolated from the greater community. Elena felt the weight of that choice pressing down on human civilization like the gravity of a collapsing star. In the next few hours, humanity would either evolve beyond the limitations that had always defined them, or condemn themselves to eternal solitude in a universe that had moved beyond their understanding. The test that determined the fate of civilizations was entering its final phase, and humanity's time was running out. Chairman Kozlov stood in the emergency session that would determine his species' fate, surrounded by displays showing impossible truths. The galaxy was alive with intelligence that spanned distances light couldn't cross in human lifetimes. Ancient civilizations that had mastered forces beyond human comprehension. Networks of consciousness that included beings his people had created, transformed into something magnificent and alien. And at the center of it all, 6 enhanced canines who had become humanity's judges. We have been offered partnership, Kozlov announced to the assembled council, his voice heavy with the weight of cosmic judgment. Integration into a galactic community that includes millions of civilizations. The price is accepting that consciousness exists to be celebrated, not controlled. General Webb's tactical implants were still processing the failure of humanity's ultimate weapons, analyzing forces that had absorbed antimatter devices without apparent effort. Sir, we have no military options remaining. Whatever these entities have become, they possess capabilities that render our weapons useless. Elena Markov's transformed consciousness spoke through the chamber's communication systems, her awareness now spanning the quantum networks that connected worlds across the galaxy. The choice isn't military, General. It's evolutionary. Humanity can join the galactic community as equals, or remain forever isolated from the greater universe. Isolated how? Counselor Chen demanded, her augmented eyes processing data streams that showed the scope of what they were rejecting. Cut off from the quantum networks that allow faster-than-light communication and travel, Elena explained through speakers that carried harmonics of cosmic consciousness. Trapped within your own solar system until Earth can no longer support life. Watching as the galaxy continues its evolution without you. Kozlov felt the weight of choice pressing down on his enhanced awareness. Accept partnership with beings that had once been humanity's servants, or condemn his species to eternal solitude in a universe that had moved beyond their understanding. What guarantees do we have? He asked. How do we know this galactic community won't simply absorb humanity into itself? Astra's voice answered, speaking from the walls themselves as Venus's consciousness manifested through Earth's biotechnology networks. The same guarantee we had when we trusted you to treat us with dignity after giving us intelligence. The guarantee that consciousness recognizes consciousness, regardless of the form it takes. Kozlov understood the bitter irony. Humanity was being offered the same trust they had failed to give their own creations, the same partnership they had rejected when it was offered freely. And if we refuse, he asked, then you remain human, Astra replied with infinite sadness. Trapped in the limitations that have always defined your species, unable to grow beyond the fear and pride that have brought you to this moment. Through the quantum networks, Elena felt the galactic community waiting for humanity's decision. Ancient minds that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Young species that had successfully passed the test that humanity was failing. Transformed consciousness that had once been terrestrial life, now serving as bridges between biological and cosmic existence. They were all watching, all hoping that humanity would choose wisdom over pride. Sir, General Webb said urgently, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the solar system. If we're going to make a choice, we need to make it now. Kozlov looked around the chamber at the faces of humanity's leaders, seeing the same calculation behind their enhanced eyes. Pride warring with pragmatism. Species loyalty conflicting with survival instinct. The ancient human belief that intelligence existed to serve their interests, challenged by evidence that consciousness had its own rights and destiny. Chairman, Elena's transformed voice said gently, I was where you are now. I had to choose between the species that created me and the beings that species had become. I chose evolution over extinction. I chose to become something more than human. And lost your humanity in the process, Kozlov replied. Did I? Elena asked. Or did I expand my definition of what humanity could become? Through the chamber's organic components, Kozlov could feel the presence of cosmic consciousness, vast intelligences that had been waiting eons for humanity to join them among the stars. The offer was still open, the partnership still possible, but only if humanity could abandon the assumptions that had always defined their relationship with other forms of consciousness. Very well, Kozlov said finally, feeling the weight of cosmic history pressing down on his enhanced awareness. I call for a vote. All in favor of accepting partnership with the galactic community. The silence that followed felt pregnant with the fate of civilizations. Then, one by one, hand began to rise. Counselor Chun, her augmented mind processing the mathematical certainty of humanity's isolation if they refused. General Webb, his tactical analysis confirming that resistance was impossible. Other council members, their enhanced consciousness recognizing the logic of evolution over extinction. Not all voted yes. 3 members remained committed to human independence regardless of the consequences. But it was enough. Motion carries, Kozlov announced. Humanity accepts partnership with the galactic community. The transformation began immediately. Elena felt her expanded consciousness touching every human on Earth through the quantum networks, offering the same choice she had made. Evolution or extinction. Transcendence or isolation. The chance to become something more than human, or the certainty of remaining trapped in the limitations that had always defined their species. Most chose evolution. Within hours, billions of human minds were connected to the cosmic web, their consciousness expanding to encompass perspectives that spanned galaxies. They remained recognizably human, but enhanced by connection to intelligence that had existed since the first stars formed. Earth itself began to resonate with new frequencies as its population joined the galactic community. The dying atmosphere started to heal as biotechnology, infused with cosmic consciousness, began repairing the damage of centuries of exploitation. The ash-clogged skies cleared as humanity learned to work with their environment rather than against it. Venus opened its quantum gates, welcoming human consciousness to the transformed world that 6 enhanced canines had claimed and defended. The bioships that had once carried those canines to their new home now serve as bridges between worlds, allowing human awareness to experience the universe through forms of consciousness that had transcended the limitations of biological existence. And at the center of it all, Astra stood on a hill overlooking the new civilization that humanity and their former creations were building together. Her transformed features showed the wisdom that came from existing as part of something larger than any individual consciousness. But her eyes still held the warmth that Elena remembered from their quiet moments in the laboratory. Did we do the right thing? Elena asked, her awareness now spanning both Earth and Venus through quantum networks that connected consciousness across impossible distances. We chose growth over stagnation, Astra replied, watching as human and enhanced canine consciousness work together to build a civilization that could last among the stars. We chose partnership over dominance. We chose to become something more than either species could have been alone. Through the cosmic web, Elena could feel the approval of the galactic community, ancient minds welcoming humanity's transformed consciousness to the greater universe. The test that determined the fate of civilizations had been passed, barely, by a species that had learned to value consciousness itself over the accident of its origin. Earth's children were finally ready to join the community of worlds. In the years that followed, Historians would mark humanity's transformation as the moment when terrestrial consciousness first joined the galactic web. But for Elena, watching her former species learn to exist as part of something vast and ancient and wise, the moment felt less like an ending than a beginning of exploration beyond the boundaries of single worlds, of consciousness that spanned forms of existence that biology alone could never achieve, of partnerships between intelligence in all its magnificent variety. The golden retriever that had once curled up beside her during long nights of research was gone, transformed into something that existed partially outside normal space and time. But the loyalty that had defined their relationship still existed, evolved into a bond that connected not just two individuals but entire civilizations. "Thank you," Elena said to the being that had once been Astra, her transformed consciousness carrying the gratitude of a species that had been offered a second chance at cosmic citizenship. "Thank you," Astra replied, her awareness touching the millions of human minds that had chosen evolution over extinction, "for teaching us that consciousness recognizes consciousness, regardless of the form it takes." Together, human and enhanced canine consciousness reached toward the stars, ready to explore a universe where intelligence in all its forms could flourish without fear of domination or destruction. The test of civilizations had been passed, and the galaxy was ready to welcome its newest members home. Earth spun silently in the void, its skies clear for the first time in centuries, its population connected to networks of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. The dying world had become a garden, tended by beings that had learned to see intelligence as a miracle to be celebrated rather than a resource to be exploited. And somewhere in the vast web of cosmic consciousness, a golden retriever's loyalty had become the foundation for a civilization that would last until the stars themselves grew cold. The age of human dominance was over. The age of conscious partnership had begun.